Right, I got asked if I would make this video, and in case it wasn't immediately obvious from the way that I talk and stuff, Line 6 and Yamaha don't actually pay me to do any of this stuff. I do the stuff with the Helix and the HX Stomp because I actually really like to use them every day, even if people who work for other companies seem to think that I work for them. I don't. I was asked if I would do a video looking at the Line 6 Pod Go, which is sort of the cheapest of Line 6's modeler stuff, versus the Boss GX100. Now the Boss GX100 is new to me, but I think it's actually one of the, for me, I think the better Boss modelers that they've made. Specifically, I think because you've got now a very much a free signal path, and if I knew how it worked, you know, it'd be fine. Yeah, we've got a touch screen, which to me I'm not particularly fussed about. I don't need that, but a free signal path is really cool. So yeah, I wanted to get in a little bit deeper to this. Now, the most obvious thing that you probably expect is that I'd go with the Pod Go. The Pod Go is actually cheaper, I think. This doesn't have MIDI, neither does the Boss GX100. I think it maybe has USB MIDI, but in terms of, I'm staring at a MIDI output. It's got MIDI. The Boss has got MIDI, obviously. Got a ground lift on it. Outputs are similar. They both got an effects loop. This has got an amp control on it. I feel like Boss kind of, for me, have killed the GT1000 core a little bit with this, because it can do most of the things that I think you'd want out of these devices and is a bit more giggable. Got an expression pedal. The Boss GX100, clearly, you know, entirely metal chassis. This has a plastic kind of molded bit on the bottom. I'll show you the screens. I think they're pretty much equivalent size. You've got 4 knobs here. The Boss stuff is generally very well made, I have to say. The Line 6 stuff I don't think quite competes at this price range anyway, just because Boss seem to make really quality stuff. The reason that I would go for the Boss GX100, I think, you know, purely from my point of view, I've got the HX Stomp that covers my tiny modeler needs, and if I need, you know, a full modeler that can do everything, I've got the Helix. The Pod Go is sort of that entry-level modeler, and it's cool, but it can't do dual amps, which the Boss GX100 can, and it can't do parallel paths, which the Boss GX100 can. Now the HX Stomp can. So if you've thought, I'd like to check out what a Roland Jazz Chorus sounds like with a Vox AC30, you can do that on the HX Stomp. You could do that sort of with the GX100. With the Pod, you're very much limited to a single amp and a single cab per preset. Another element that I find really cool with the Boss GX100, and I'll show you this a little bit more in depth on the screen, is that you can go between preset to preset, and if you've arranged your signal paths so that they're all similar, you're going to have seamless switching, and as well you have spillover between presets. Now that is really, really powerful, and what that means is you can have, I've got it set up here. Anyway, yeah, so if you have it so that the signal path, so you say you had like, I've got a drive pedal, an amp, a reverb and a delay, as long as your kind of presets around that are the same, you can switch between them seamlessly and with a looper. You can't do that with the Pod Go. So I think actually the Boss GX100, although it doesn't have things like snapshots, which I think Line 6's best kind of feature, it does have this ability that if you're clever with your routing and your patch building, you can seamlessly switch between them, and I'll show you that. So for me, I think I'd go with the Boss GX100 just because it's something new for me. I think also the sounds, potentially there's going to be differences between them, but I think you've got enough tweakability with both units that you can get in there. You've got sag and resonance within the Boss GX100, like the power amp kind of things. You've got all of the power amp stuff in the Pod Go, but once you switch in an IR and stuff, I think you can get useful tones out of all of them. I'm going to try and do that. I'm going to put together an intro kind of looking at both tone wise and what I can dial in. Obviously I've had way less time with the Boss GX100, but I think, you know, if I was buying a unit for the first time and I didn't have any experience with Line 6, I didn't have any experience with Boss, for the first time I feel like this Boss GX100 is one that I might say actually that at this price range is quite a good deal, I think. You can do your dual amping, you can do parallel paths, you've got more blocks available than on a Podgo or HX Stomp. It's very much a giggable kind of format. The screen is colour, and you've got touch screen if you need it. So I think, without going like super in detail and making this video unnecessarily long, I'd take a look at the Boss GX100, and maybe you can find some other demos on YouTube of it. But I'm going to dig in now and show you on the screen what I'm talking about. I'd say the biggest downside for both of the units are the power supplies. So with the Podgo, you get something either like this, or it will be another type of, like a smaller wall wart with a thing. But anyway, they're kind of this sort of thing. And with Boss, you've got this kind of thing. And for me personally, I think the most giggable power supply is probably something more like a kettle lead. These sorts of things I don't think are super friendly for the stage. You know, let me know in the comments if you disagree with that, but that's one thought. I think this is the alternative kind of power supply style for the Podgo. And again, it's quite a bulky thing. So screen-wise and size-wise, I think the Boss GX100 is kind of smaller this way, but wider this way. The Podgo, I quite like the button layout. The difference in screens, if we put them like this, sort of screen-wise, I feel like you're getting a very similar experience. I have to say, I feel like the Helix UI for me is a little bit better because I'm familiar with it. And you know, you've got these representations of pedals and amps, these kind of generic hexagons which are coloured a certain way. The way you add stuff, you sort of press it, drag it down into the signal chain. Yeah. And then you can come out of this view. You can also press this tuner in for a longer time to get this other view, manual view, and then you can assign different bits and pieces here. I need to dig into this a bit more. Obviously, the Podgo, you would have seen me doing other stuff on the channel with it, but it's a relatively, I think, straightforward experience. If I press mode, you know, I can assign things to, if I go to bypass control, this is how I would assign things on here. I find like the HX effects and HX Stomp is easiest for this sort of thing, where you can just sort of press where you want it to be with the capacitive switches. The Podgo is a bit more difficult, but you know, not crazy. Or you could press learn and then just press, and then you've got some other views. So you've got like this view here where you've got your layout. Again, I feel like that the Helix, where you've got scribble strips, is like the optimum. This LT and Podgo view is a bit different. One thing that I am missing is these kind of cab controls on here. So if we go into effects, I can show you here. We go across, we've got cab type. I'm choosing an IR here, but we don't have anything like high cut or anything, whereas in the cab here we can use high cuts to kind of shape a tone. Also, one thing about the Podgo that I like is having the gate on the input. Conversely, you'd have to just add in a noise suppressor here, and I presume adding in a graphic EQ like this is probably good practice. So the interfaces are a little bit different, to use. I think I'd give the edge to Line 6 there. Build quality, I'd give the edge to Boss. Sound quality, you can be your own judge, I think, but the fact that you can do dual cabs, dual amps, you can, you know, build a bit more of a complex preset in the Boss GX100. I think they deserve points for that. Price-wise, the Boss GX100 is pretty reasonable, I think, for what you're getting. You're getting a touchscreen, you're getting a very quality built thing. The stock presets don't sound great, I don't think, on either unit, so I don't think that's particularly, it's probably fairly even there. Ease of use, I'd give to Podgo, but you know, this is kind of, I think, Boss's easiest multi-effects modeler to use. So on the Podgo, the way that I use it for a gig is to use snapshots where you can change parameters of any block as you go. So you see like presence, changes based on snapshot. That's how I set things up. Now, once you come out of this, if you change presets, you get a little bit of a drop, and you know, things don't carry over. There's no spillover between presets. On the Boss GX100 though, there is. I'm going to show you that because I think that's a really neat feature, especially at this price point. Right, so I can't be too exhaustive about like comparing tones or anything, but this is the feature that I think makes the GX100 really worth a look. So here we go, look. Here there's kind of seamless switching. Now, I need to tell you that the reason that this is seamless, if we go into effects, is you'll see that all of these chains are the same. So what's changing is within the actual parameters rather than... oh, I can't show you that. That's a bit annoying, like I can't just switch out of that. But so just take like a mental map of that, and what I did was I saved these and I'm making the same changes on all of them. So, you know, my chain is noise suppressor, phaser, compressor, distortion, into the amp, then into a GEQ. So I've just kept it the same for everything, and that has meant that you get this kind of seamless switching. So what I would do if I was gigging this would be to set up sort of like, before I do this, I'd set up like the mental map of what I need. So I need, you know, a reverb, a looper, a delay, and map that out, go into each one and turn on or off the blocks that I need. Oh, here you go, now you can see. So, you know, like the rhythm tone, I have the distortion on, then the lead tone, it goes off, and then a phaser comes on for that clean. So yeah, it's like really quite a powerful little thing. I think the looper will carry over as well, as long as you've got a looper in there, but I think it's certainly, in my opinion, quite an advanced little piece of kit. You know, it's not a crazy amount of money. I think it's definitely, to me, more usable than the GT1000 core, and you've got this kind of fully flexible signal chain, which I like. So yeah, I think it's worth a look. You don't get that really with most modelers, so I think, to be honest, it might be worth checking out if you're into some of the sounds from Boss. I don't know that it's necessarily the easiest tones to dial in, but I think there's a sufficient level of tweakability that you could probably dial in tones that you really dig with it, especially if you're using decent IRs. So yeah, I'd say sort of a winning feature for me in this price category is the ability that you could set up these kind of signal chains. If your presets kind of match with the same signal chain and the same sort of organization of effects, you'll get this kind of seamless and spilling over effect thing, and I think that's really potentially very powerful if you're gigging these things. Hopefully that's sort of a decent run through. I hope that covers some of the things you might be interested in. These are the things that I think are worth talking about. I could go more in detail and do side-by-side comparisons of models, but I think, you know, you can get a huge range of tones out of any modeler, so none of that stuff, in my opinion, would be too definitive anyway. I just wanted to show you that I think is a real key feature that really only the Boss GX100 has. It's not something that many other modelers do at all anyway. Let me know if you disagree. You know, of course, I still think the pod is a great tool as well, and it's not going to mean that I'm stopping doing anything with the pod. It's just that in this case, I thought someone asked me, you know, right now, which would you buy out of these two things? I think the GX100 is actually quite a cool piece of kit. Cheers!